Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm going to be talking about episode 3 of Binbogami Ga. Overall, I think this is a pretty solid continuation of what we've been seeing from the series so far. In terms of what happens with the plot, what we're presented with here is actually a very logical continuation of what we have seen previously. The character development is, I think, alright, but not really the strongest thing going on in this episode. I think this is one more of a thing where the plot sort of carries the episode a little more strongly than the actual characterization. But with that said, let's jump right in and start talking about some of the various things that are going on here. First of all, the parodies and references to other anime is very significantly toned down here. As best I can tell, we only get two. Well, I guess I should say three. The card that the kids are all obsessed with looks very obviously to me like a Yu-Gi-Oh card, but that's not a series I'm terribly familiar with. So beyond that, I really can't comment. The two parodies that anime references that we do get. One, we obviously have Ichiko dressed up as a very Naruto-esque ninja, complete with the Leaf Village headband going on there. And again, I do remember this from the manga, but seeing as how Binbogami Ga runs in a Shonen Jump affiliated magazine, I don't think there's any real copyright issues going on right there. And of course, Momiji counters this by dressing up as the classic character Lupin III. Lupin, of course, been around since the late 60s, if I remember correctly. Unfortunately, my knowledge of manga history kind of peters out around the early 1980s, so beyond that, I'm a little iffy. But yeah, Lupin, very much an institution in Japan. It's a series I kind of tend to take on more of a story-by-story basis, but I have some friends who are humongous Lupin fans, so I understand what it is about that series that they like. It just doesn't really always click for me. But anyway, let's talk about the character situation going on here. We're introduced to another one of our main characters from the show. That's Keita. We also get introduced to his family, and it's probably not going to come as a surprise to you that these guys are going to be supporting characters here in the series as it continues along. Keita, I think, is an all-right character, but he's one of those characters that, to me, is more defined by the characters around him than a character who has a very distinct personality of his own. Now, as we see in this episode, his big thing in life is, of course, providing for his family. And, it's understandable. His parents have run off. Now, in the translation of the manga that I read, it said that they had gone off to search for the treasure of Atlantis, while in the anime here it says they went off to search for the treasure of Tokugawa. I've never heard of the treasure of Tokugawa. I assume this is just some Japanese thing that I've never heard of. There is, of course, the possibility that since the manga translation that I read was a fan translation, that might have just been a little bit of adaptation on the part of the translators. I don't know. I'd have to see the actual original Japanese version in order to tell that sort of thing. But that's the hazards of going with fan translations on stuff. There are others, but that's neither here nor there in relation to this. So, as I said, Keita is someone who I think is really more defined by his relationship to other characters rather than anything that's particularly unique about him. And not that this doesn't make him a bad character. It's just he's not a very well-rounded character. His whole thing is, I must look after my siblings. And as a motivation, that's, an understandable and compelling one. We can understand why someone would go to great lengths, working all these jobs. He's dead on his butt at school, which, can't really be helping his academic career, but he is making these sacrifices willingly, without complaint. So that does establish that Keita is a caring person, that he's a self-sacrificing person. And when we see later on when Ichiko tries to give him some money, he basically he literally throws the money right back at her and says, I'm not going to take charity from you. And he even later says, it might be just me going on my pride, thinking that I can, support a family of 5 on, part-time jobs and while trying to go to school. So we also get that he does have a sense of pride. But still, he just really doesn't feel like a character who, if you were to try and do a story about him all on his own, would really be a very compelling protagonist. And honestly, and just to kind of give you another example, look at how Ichiko relates to Keita. She doesn't relate to Keita in any way as a person. She is entirely interested in him as a device. She thinks that, oh hey, he's a good-looking guy. He's apparently very dedicated to family. This guy would be a good boyfriend for me. And she is entirely interested only in what having Keita as a boyfriend can do for her. He is to her an accessory. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for, an accessory. Keita's emotions, Keita's feelings mean absolutely nothing to her. Which is important because they play into Ichiko's development this episode. Now, oh wait, I'm sorry. There was another reference there to an anime. I forgot. I'll get back on where I was going. I think there was a reference thrown into there to the old classic '60s manga Rose of Versailles. When Ichiko's imagining that whole handsome prince thing. That's what I think that was. But don't treat that as gospel. I really don't know very much about that series. But anyway, getting back to Ichiko's relationship with Keita this episode. Now, as I said, she basically wants Keita as an accessory. She wants him, honestly, for no other reason than apparently she thinks having a boyfriend would be cool, and almost certainly that it would make other girls at the school jealous. So she tries the old trick of trying to butter up his family. He focuses on his younger brother, which through a series of circumstances, which I'm sure in no way, shape, or form are tied to Ichiko's sucking the fortune out of people around her, ultimately ends up putting him in life-threatening danger. Now, before we get back to Ichiko, I'm going to take a second to talk about what's going on with Momiji. And it's funny that Momiji is actually, in a way, playing the role of mentor, of all things, to Ichiko. She is the person who is there, not even really because this is what she's trying to do, necessarily, to guide Ichiko into making the proper moral choice. Now, we have seen that Ichiko will sacrifice, will even give up some of her fortune in order to help someone that she cares about. But she only had one person in the world that she really cared about. And she is basically even flat out states that she has no interest in using this ability to help strangers. So what Momiji is here to do is to test just where Ichiko is willing to draw the line. She says, Ichiko, I have no interest in using my abilities to help other people. So Momiji, given the circumstances, says, all right, well, here is an innocent child whose life is in danger. Are you willing to use that power that you have to help him? And Ichiko finds out that, yes, she is willing to use her powers to help to save the life of an innocent child. And she's not doing it because she wants to impress Keita. She's doing it because for whatever her flaws, Momiji Ichiko is not somebody who, if she can do something, is going to stand by and let a child die. And she even later says that if Keita had gone into that oh geez, what's the term I'm looking for? The wash there, the that artificial river, whatever. It reminds me of like the L.A. River in L.A. where, well, whatever. But that Keita would have drowned too. Now another thing here is, and Momiji says this to her, this is also about Ichiko learning to tap into her fortune, to use it directly at will in situations where she needs it for something specific, that she's not just trusting in the fortune to get her what she wants her to get out of the situation. She is actively taking control of this ability that she has. Now, and she does ultimately, of course, save Keita and his little brother's life. And sorry, I forget what the little brother's name is. And this all ultimately ends up tying back to something that we were talking about earlier. When Ichiko is at school, she is imagining the character for person, and she imagines herself being held up by other people. But at the very end of it all, she sees Keita and his brother holding each other, and she sees that the character for people is meant to show not other people holding up one person, but people holding each other. And the part where she mentions that you're supposed to think of, the character for people as two people together is 100% true. I have my favorite kanji book actually uses little visual representations like that to help you remember what the various kanji look like and what they mean. They're memetics or something like that. I forget exactly how you pronounce that word. So that's a real one that I personally have used, and of course it makes perfect sense that they would use that in the schools over there in Japan to help the kids learn all those kanji that they need. So here at the end we ultimately have seen Ichiko grow as a person a little bit. She has shown some ability to feel empathy for strangers and to go out of her way to do something for other people. Now, granted, going out there and doing something to save the life of a child, well, unless you have a heart of absolute stone, most people are going to do that. And Ichiko even says that she didn't really think that she was going to be in danger because of her abilities. So it wasn't really so much a case of someone running into a burning building. It was so much a case of, is Ichiko actually willing to get off her butt and do something that requires her to give a crap about another human being? And the answer is, of course, yes, which does show that, as selfish as she is, Ichiko does have some good qualities. And that's important because Ichiko is one of our main protagonists. We have to, I'm not actually going to say we even have to like her. I remember not too long ago I saw an interview with George R.R. Martin, and he articulated something that I have believed in terms of storytelling for years. And that is that characters do not necessarily have to be likable for audiences to want to watch them or read about them. They just have to be interesting. And if you're familiar with A Song of Ice and Fire or Game of Thrones, they are filled with many characters who are not really very likable people at all, but are indeed very interesting characters. Now, as good as it is, Binbogami Ga does not operate on the same level of Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones. So it does make more sense that they would want to keep Ichiko at least a somewhat likable protagonist. And honestly, I think this is something that is actually very good. A good way to describe both Momiji and Ichiko is that, yeah, Momiji and Ichiko are both in a lot of ways real jerks. But while they can be jerks at times, they can also be kind, they can be funny, they can show empathy for other people, and they can sometimes sometimes do things for the benefit of other people. Now, look at Momiji here. She is showing Ichiko that, you know what, you're not. You might think that you only care about yourself, but the truth is, there is some compassion within you. There is some caring within you beyond caring about the one person that you had in your life. So again, it is Momiji as, of all things, Ichiko's mentor here. Now, of course, Momiji has her own motivations for doing this, which of course is to get Ichiko to give up some of her fortune. So, but still, this is something that I think is a really prime example of what we're going to see more of in the relationship between Sakura and Ichiko. This is an episode that's really, in many ways, about setting up where the story is going to go from here. And I think that it does a really nice job of that. So let me see. Oh yeah, let's talk about kanji briefly one more time. If you've noticed that when Momiji does her turn into a little cloud, except for a head thing, that an additional character appears on her forehead. When she does that, that is the character for Small. And I can't remember if we've seen it yet in the anime, but she does have the ability to turn into a really, really big version of herself, at least briefly. And when she does that, the character changes to the character for Big. So, you know, I'm just throwing that out there for the folks who are not proficient in Japanese. Let's see. Actually, there is one more thing that I wanted to talk about with Keita there. And I do like that he refuses to take money from Ichiko. And he even does acknowledge that Ichiko does have a point about how if he were to take that money, that it could do a lot of good for his siblings. And, you know, that is a thing. Money is something that people have argued about philosophically for for generations, for centuries. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I have some great solution that people throughout history who are far more intelligent than I have not come up with. But that said, let me share with you an idea I have about money. And my opinion of it there is that money is a tool. You can do good things with money, you can do bad things with money. And like it or not, money is important in modern society. Now, if you really want to, I guess you could gather up some supplies and go and live in the woods somewhere and live off the land, but that's going to appeal to very few people in our day and age in the developed world. So, like it or not, one way or the other, we need money to get by. And I personally have been on, well, not exactly I would say that I've never been wealthy, but I grew up, you know, just a regular middle-class guy in the Midwest. But, you know, I have had my ups and downs in life. I've had a time in my life where I was literally living off peanut butter and ramen. And boy, oh boy, did that suck. Now, I'm fortunate right now that I have a job that doesn't pay me enough that I would call myself in any way, shape, or form wealthy, but I'm able to afford the things that I need in my life. I'm able to save a decent bit of money for my future and live a lifestyle that is, for me, comfortable. So I can't sit here and tell you that money isn't important, because sadly it is. But, and this is the big point that the whole thing between Keita and Ichiko is, money, as the Beatles wisely said many years ago, can't buy you love. Keita, for all his poverty, is someone who is very rich in love. He has 4 siblings who he cares about with all his heart, and his siblings all care about him greatly. They are a very dedicated, very tight, very loving family. And as the parallel, we have Ichiko, someone whose parents have gone off and basically left her to be raised by a servant. And while Suwano was obviously a very loving person, he didn't really do such a great job of instilling the whole "don't be a selfish jerk" into Ichiko. So, and Ichiko, I mean, even acknowledges this to some degree, that while she has money, Keita has people who love him, and while she has money, she is alone. So, the best things in life may or may not be free, but one of the best things in life is love. And if you have love, well, maybe you won't have everything you need in life in order to do what you want to do, but you'll certainly be richer for it than not having love. My God, I sounded horribly pretentious there, didn't I? You have my sincere apologies, folks. It's I've been reading philosophy today, so I'm kind of in that I'm kind of in that mood. Anyway, let me see here. Yes. There were a few more things I wanted to talk about. First of all, how did Keita know where Ichiko lived? You know, it's not important, but I can't help but wonder. Another thing, and this is something that I absolutely loved when I saw it. If you pay attention when Ichiko is out shopping, heading to the convenience store, in the background you will see a sign for Quickie Mart. That's QUICK-E-Mart. And yet, let me tell you, folks, yes, indeed, Japanese people do like The Simpsons. I remember working at my school. I saw kids with Simpsons pencil cases. Like, if you want to laugh, throw Simpsons Japanese commercial into YouTube. You'll get more than a few hits. Definitely check out the Japanese CC Lemon commercials that The Simpsons did. Those are quite entertaining. And if you ever get the chance to give it a try, give the actual drink CC Lemon a shot. It's as it sounds, basically kind of a lemonade drink, but it's not bad. Another thing Keita mentions that I wanted to bring up is that he's looking after his siblings by himself. I can't help but wonder, why has no one called social services? Now, granted, the whole, hey, shouldn't somebody have called a social worker because nobody's looking after these kids, is a staple of not just Japanese entertainment, but turns up more than a few times in Western entertainment. But still, you would think that somebody would have called the social services in regards to Keita's family. Because if I'm reading this right, Keita is only 16 years old, and you're actually not legally considered an adult in Japan until you're 20, or at the very least, you can't buy cigarettes and booze until then. On the other hand, and this isn't something that really came up very much when I was living in Japan, so I can't claim to be any kind of great expert on it, but from what I've picked up about social services in Japan, it's, well, people try, but it's not that great. And that is unfortunately an all too common situation around the world. So, given that, I actually think, as sad as it is, Keita's younger siblings actually might be better off being looked after by an overworked 16-year-old than being put into the system. But again, I'm not an expert on the social services in Japan well enough to make any kind of real proclamation about how true that is. And with that, I have one more thing that I want to mention before I wrap this up. And this is one thing that I actually like about the transition of this series from manga to anime. And that is that just by the necessity of animation, the character designs for the manga are tightened up significantly from how they are in the original source material. Now, I don't mean this as a knock on the original creator of the series, whose name I still cannot remember. I really need to sit down and just actually memorize that. But anyway, Guess I'll just have to have another look at the Wikipedia page later. But anyway, we do get to see the character designs that we see here in the anime. I feel just are are tighter. They're more detailed. We have just a much I think a clearer picture of the characters' features, how their hair works, and honestly, I just think it makes the story more enjoyable. Well, folks, that's all that I have for you this time. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. Of course, you can continue to follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. And until next time, take care and have a good one.